Welcome to the Worker Co. Podcast, Minnesota edition. The Worker Co. podcast exists to tell stories of employee ownership, to be a resource, expanding imagination for and access to broad employee ownership. We tell these stories because we believe employee ownership is a powerful tool to lift people out of poverty and create wealth for workers. I'm Kirsten Kennedy, Executive Director of the MNCEO, and your host. Thank you for joining us. Heather Braimbridge Cox is the President and CEO of Windings, Inc. in New Ulm, Minnesota, and is a member of the company's board of directors. Heather joined Windings in late 2015 as Chief Financial Officer and rapidly progressed to President and CEO in 2016. Heather continues to lead this 100% employee-owned company, ESOP, Employee Stock Ownership Plan, for our listeners that do not know, to a heightened sense of ownership, self-direction, and accountability. Heather is a fellow chartered certified accountant and holds an MBA in international finance from Oxford Brookes University in Oxford, England. She has over 25 years of senior leadership experience and a proven track record of results-driven leadership and effective team management. Her experience cuts across various specialty industries, including operations in the United States, Canada, and the Caribbean. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you, Kirsten.
Next, we have Jim Spoon, who's been at Windings for 28 years. So you were 10 when you started?
Just about, yep.
Okay. And is an employee owner since 1998. As the lead generation engineer at Windings, Jim provides custom production and engineering solutions to customers in medical, aerospace, automotive, and factory automation industries. He supports inside sales, customer service, and engineering, helping to create long-lasting partnerships between customers and Windings. Jim, thanks for joining us. Okay, we're going to start with you, Heather. So let's start at the beginning. What is Windings, Inc.?
Well, thank you, Kirsten, for having us here today. We're particularly proud of our company, and I am so thrilled to have Jim with me as one of our employee owners. So Jim and I are co-owners in the same company. We have different positions, but we are owners together. So Windings started in 1965 as a custom manufacturer of motors, electric motors, and motor components. We build these components and motors for critical and special applications. Now, you would not find our motors in your household appliances, not in a ceiling fan or in a vacuum cleaner. You would instead find our motors landing on Mars, going around the sun, in some military or defense system. We focus on industries where size and performance matters, and our engineers really have a great time working with our customers to design and engineer unique, specialized, custom applications. And I know that Jim would be able to expand on some of that because that's exactly what he does from day to day.
When I talk about what we do and the span of the motors that we do, I can say we're from the sun to soon to be the Galilean moons of Jupiter or Europa. So we have parts orbiting the sun. We have parts on Mars right now, part of the descent braking system, and also the arm of the Perseverance rover. That's working quite well. And I mentioned the soon-to-be Europa mission. We are on antenna gimbals for that. So it's just amazing what we do. And, when I talk about things like that, it's like, oh, motors, yeah, I suppose you probably just do alternators. And like Heather said, things for appliances. No.
And one of my very favorite ones, Kirsten, is that we are reaching to touch the sun. The Parker Solar Probe that was launched many years ago, the goal of that mission was to get as close to the sun's corona as possible. NASA is in charge of that program. And it's still going around the sun, and with every revolution that it goes, it gets closer and closer. So right now we're within the sun's corona, and our electric motor is helping to take those pictures. Imagine how hellishly hot it is being that close to the sun. So when we talk about extreme environments and high performance, and where size and extreme hazards matter and things must work and have to work, that's where windings come in. So we get excited about space, but we also have applications that are in medical and surgical tools. We're also responding to downhole tooling for energy industries, military and defense systems. We can't talk very much about those. And then there's also commercial and military jets, wide spread across many industries, just helping to power special and custom applications.
And now when you produce motors, concept motors, you're not making 100 million of them, right?
Correct.
Very low volume,
Okay.
and high mix. And the other important thing that we would like to leave with you is that a lot of our assembly is done by hand, which speaks to how well trained our technicians have to be. Because they're trying to achieve a certain performance level and very high precision that you wouldn't be able to get from a standard motor. So there is a lot of time spent on training and developing our technicians to be able to read prints, understand the instructions and the requirements in testing and ensuring that the motors or the components will deliver the performance that our customers are looking for. And we don't build too many of them. So you have to be really good and highly skilled.
Okay, so Windings converted to an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan, in 2008. Can you just share a little bit of the origin story of the why of choosing employee ownership and where you are now with it?
So I have to take the opportunity to go back even further than that because we're rather proud of our origins. It's an interesting history in that Windings is connected to the Oster Company. Yes, Oster.
I did not know that.
So the Oster Company had a factory in New Ulm way back in the 60s where they manufactured very small components. And when they made the decision to move that production facility to Florida, the then plant manager, decided he didn't want to leave the lovely town of New Ulm. So he stayed, and with some of the employees that worked with him, he started Windings. And they started, Jim, if you recall, what was the first product that they built? Can you recall?
It was little actuators for...
military cockpit,
Yeah.
analog military cockpit instruments. And he just grew the business from there. Now, when J.W. McKinney, that was his name, was ready to sell, he sold to the Rybergs in New Ulm, Roger and Carol Ryberg. Roger was an engineer at the time working with 3M. There is a 3M plant in New Ulm. And he wanted to try his hand at entrepreneurship. So he bought this little company, and he and Carol grew this business, expanded the offering, and before long, we were making electric motors for all kinds of applications, and especially aerospace. As it came to 1998, when Carol and Roger Ryberg were approaching retirement, they did not want to sell this business to someone who would move it out of the small town of New Ulm. They wanted that business to remain in the town, and they also didn't want their employees, they wanted them to continue having employment and participating. And so they got the idea to start transferring the ownership of the company to the employees themselves. Now, Roger started it in 1998. It took him 10 years to transfer full ownership because he financed it himself at the time. Many could find other ways to do it, but that was his way of transitioning out of the business. And not only was he giving them an opportunity to start building their wealth, he was rewarding them for helping him to build his own wealth. Imagine that, and what a legacy he left for the employees, right? And over 10 years, he not only transitioned, but he prepared them to take over the business.
So while he was doing a little at a time,
Yes.
he was doing that, building a culture of ownership and getting them
Correct.
ready to
take on the business, which is really a brilliant way to do transition, right? And to ensure that they will be able to continue the business. And I credit Winding's success today to that approach to transition. It wasn't just immediate, I hand it off to you and I'm gone. He didn't do that. He helped them understand what it means to keep this business going.
And it was really interesting too, just as how the transition went and how the culture of Windings changed as far as, okay, I'm an owner, I'm gaining the wealth. You know, you're a worker, you're just getting a paycheck. Well, then it changed. I'm an owner. What I'm doing is actually going to affect my wealth. So I'm going to make darn sure that what I produce is going to be to the best of my ability. And not just, I'm working for the man, I'm here to get my paycheck. No, it's not like that. It is a paradigm shift. For anybody that would be looking at going into the ESOP program, be it an owner or not, it's one of those things you can't really put a measure on, but it is real. How engaged the employees become.
How has it changed as you were there, right, when they moved through to an employee stock ownership plan or an ESOP? What did it mean for you during that transition when you were learning and then afterwards? I know 2 years ago when I came, Roger came with me and he told me, he goes, they had to kick me out of here. I would just come in every
He
single day.
still comes in to visit.
I know, because he loves it. And he did present with me
Well,
last
to be
year.
fair, he is our hero.
Yeah, he is.
And he is revered by, and especially those who were there when Roger did what he did. So he holds, they hold Roger in a very high esteem, and he has a special place for them. And so that connection, you can't sever.
No. And he still is a champion. He is talking to everyone. He meets about employee ownership. And when he did present with me last year, he also was so grateful that he had you to take this company that he loved and nurtured into the future. And he did say, I don't get to make the decisions anymore. And sometimes I think, oh, is that the road they should be going? And then he goes, it's in good hands.
Oh, that's
With
great
Heather and the
to hear.
employees.
But what a legacy he has left behind, right? He has impacted several generations. This is generational wealth that he has made possible for over 200 people.
Can you share, do you have any stories you would like to share about employees, it being transformational?
Well, one
for
sitting
them?
right next to
Yeah.
me here.
I'll let him tell his story.
And then I will chip in.
Yeah, I'll share my story. I can tell you, back in 1998, I had been at Windings for roughly 2 years. And, I'll never forget the day that Roger got up in front of the plant and he talked about this ESOP and explained really what it was. Me being in my, mid-20s, retirement, yeah, whatever. And he was saying, if this is managed right and you guys work hard, you can really consider early retirement. You could retire a millionaire. It's like, yeah, whatever.
That's hard. That's hard when you're
Yeah.
young and probably didn't come from generational wealth to imagine something really changing in your lifetime.
Exactly. So I didn't really believe it, but gosh darn it, 28 years, he was absolutely right.
Now, Kirsten, you got to remember, employees come with their skill and their talent, and they do a very good job for the company, and they get market wages. But no one gets rich on wages. It is not intended to build wealth for you. You can barely go from paycheck to paycheck on wages and salary. So if we are not allowing our folks to generate wealth, which is capital, right? It's owning something. If they're not owning something, then what chance do they have? So Roger, in his wisdom, created this opportunity. The employees bring their skill, their talent, and they do a good job. They don't have to buy stock in the business. The stock is given to them because they've earned it by doing a good job. As the company does well, they do well. And every year, we do allocate new units to our employees. And those who retire, their units are purchased, brought back into the treasury, and reallocated to the current participants. So yes, the stock gets recycled, right? And while we're allocating new units to employees, which they don't pay for, it doesn't come out of their wages, it comes out of company profits. There's also the company growing, right? If it's managed well, it is doing well, it's growing, and each year that value goes up. That's how the wealth is created. Wealth is created when you own something.
Yep. So, Jim, are you going to retire early?
I am.
I hope not too early. We're not ready for that yet. But that is the real risk we run. Many of our employees do retire early because they can.
And that is almost unheard of. It really is. People retiring early.
I mean, it comes down to it, I could leave today and I would be comfortable the rest of my life.
Okay, that is not a story we hear often from workers. This is a question for Jim. Jim, in the culture, and Heather being the leader of this employee-owned company, so kind of co-owning with the employees, when you retire early, how soon do you buy him out from his shares? Is it Jim is going to retire early and then he has all that money overnight? How does that work? Or do you have a certain amount of time you can pay out?
It's dependent on how your distribution plan is set up. And
Okay.
every employee-owned company or ESOPs will have rules for their distribution and how they do it. At Windings, there is a phased payout. There's also opportunities for full payout if you work to retirement. But if you retire early, yes, you do get to sell your shares back to the company over a 5-year period. And you do benefit from the increase in share value in that 5-year period, right? You're not segregated. And so, but distribution policies are what govern how that really is handled across the ESOPs. But also, ESOPs have to continue growing.
Right.
Employee-owned companies have to grow because we have an obligation to meet the retirement, right? That's our commitment.
Yeah.
And so to do that, you have to keep growing. And sometimes that cash is needed to invest in your own growth as well. But it's a balance. That's how well you manage the business. It's a balance of investing in your own growth, but also ensuring that you're taking care of the owners and setting aside the benefit for them, because that's the commitment we have, that this will be there for them. And it's not just for those who are looking at retirement in the next year or two. It's also for those who are just joining the business, the 20-year-olds that are now coming in, Jim, that really need to have that asset there for them when they retire. So it's long-term planning, it's ensuring that we're doing well and that we're growing the business, which is why it's so important for employee-owned companies to spend time teaching and helping employees understand what it means to be owners, what it means to think and act like owners.
If this is for both of you, how does Windings create and maintain that culture of co-ownership with this traditional leadership team, right, and a board? What are some of the things you have both experienced? We'll start with Heather and then Jim, as an employee-owned company and moving through it.
Oh, there's so many things we do because culture is at the center of everything, right? It's defining the culture, because at Windings, we have defined our culture as one of taking care of our customers and taking care of each other. So we have a set of values that are not just on a poster, right, on a wall. We literally live and talk about those values every single day. It's in our conversations. It's part of our reviews. And by the way, we don't do annual reviews anymore. We do frequent conversations with employees and feedback and so on. But our culture is part of our recognition system. It's what we talk about. It's ingrained in our expectations, right? There's also the importance of what I call transparency. So employees need to know how well we're doing, and management cannot be hiding information from employees. They're owners. So if it's good, they know about it. If it's not so good, they know about it too. We sit and talk about the things that are happening in our business, and especially when we need their help. We have a thing called I Wish I Knew Why in our company, which means that anyone in our business could ask me a question about the business. Imagine that. Anyone.
I love that.
It doesn't matter who. And I have committed to answering that question.
Have you ever gotten a question where you just go like, oh, I've got to answer this question?
Often.
Okay.
But as you lead employee-owned companies, you have to be very comfortable with sharing information. You have to be comfortable being asked tough questions. Remember, we're co-owners, right?
One thing I'd like to add, Heather, is the impressive part about this, I wish I knew why, is Heather answers the questions in a plant meeting in front of everybody. So it's not just, oh, okay, I get a question, I'm going to type an email and send it off. No. She knows that if one person has this question, others do as well. So it's very important in the transparency side of things to explain that to the entire plant. And it's great. And there may be follow-up questions after that.
Yep.
Which is fine.
But the commitment is we're going to be transparent. So we share our financials. We share how we're doing with profits. We share how we're doing at a customer level. When a project didn't go so well and why it didn't go so well, let's sit down and talk about what we could have done better. That transparency makes them feel like they are really included and they are a part of the business. That's important. You're not just an employee, right? So you need to know and you need to have that input in solutions.
Correct. One other thing I'd like to add is the accessibility. Heather's door is open all the time. She's the president. She's working on presidential things. But if an employee owner comes in, she's going to take time and talk with that employee owner, and treat them as a fellow owner, because those questions are important. And how she responds is important as well. And very impressive.
Well,
Heather.
Thank you, Jim.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So Heather, before you came to Windings Inc., did you come from an employee ownership background? Had you managed?
Absolutely not.
No.
As a matter of fact, Windings is my first employee-owned company, but I got to tell you about that. I joined the business in late 2015 as the CFO, but I came from a long career in private equity. In private equity, I was that operator who would be sent into a newly acquired company. My job was always to go in, right the ship, pay off the debt, increase the earnings, and position it for sale in, say, 3 to 5 years. And I felt every time I did that, I did a good job. I would start over every 3 to 4 years, right? I was starting over. But what was really troubling to me was that when the company was sold, my job was to deliver that news to all the employees. And after working with your team or employees and getting everyone so engaged and motivated and ready to take on this, turning the ship here and would do so successfully, I would deliver the news that they no longer had a job. And I couldn't do it anymore. It's against my grain. And so I was done with that part of it. Now that's their model, the model of private equity, right? But I felt like they had nothing out of all that dedication that they had, over time. And when I had the opportunity to come to Windings, which was employee-owned, but it resonated with me because here I could bring the background and experience I had in running companies, because I have this financial background, business background, and I could employ the same strategies and grow the business, but it wasn't for a short term. It didn't have a short-term view. It was for the long haul. And it would be for everyone in the business. It wasn't just for the select group. Right?
Yes.
So to someone like me that was like, aha, this is where I need to be. I moved clear across the country to join Windings after I visited and learned all about the company and employee ownership. I lived in Mobile, Alabama, and I moved to New Ulm, Minnesota.
That's a little bit of a difference with weather.
Yes, nobody told me it would be as snowy as it is.
No, you
that
can't
was a
tell
shock.
people that.
That was a shock.
Yeah.
But they brought me here in the fall. So
Very smart. Very smart.
Very smart group. But I think for me, what convinced me to come aboard was spending time in the factory and meeting the people. It was not the interview with the then CEO. It wasn't the interview with the board members. It wasn't the interview with the executives. It was meeting the people and hearing them talk about how special this was, right? This employee-owned environment and what it meant to them. I was sold, so I came aboard.
We're so grateful you came aboard and that you came from Alabama to Minnesota, New Ulm, and our winters, well, last winter was a little mild, but it can be pretty.
I'm getting used to it. I'm learning.
You love it. You love it.
So tell me a little bit about how an employee ownership company is different than, say, the private equity or, coming in to get something to sell right away for the community. Like what does Windings' relationship with the community, New Ulm, that you have, and do you feel that having an employee-owned company really sort of keeps that wealth building in the community, or do you have people that drive 3 hours?
All of the above.
Okay.
So yes, the difference I have found is that, and Jim talked a little bit about it, right? The engagement, the high engagement and strong culture that you get from having employee ownership, because everyone is interested in seeing this business do well. They're not just coming for a paycheck. They see this as, I own a piece of this, so I want to see that it is successful. I want to help move it along. And that becomes magical. That is great for a leader. You want to have an engaged workforce. You want everybody in the company looking for ways to reduce cost. You're looking for ways to improve. You want everybody focused on doing the right things for the business. You start with that as you lead an employee-owned company. It has an impact on the community in that our employees don't. As a matter of fact, about a third of our employees live in New Ulm. We draw from neighboring towns. So we have a lot of people who drive into New Ulm on a daily basis to work with Windings. And it's interesting to me that some of our engineers, about a half of our workforce is also technical, right? They're engineers or they're technicians. Many of them are engineers by day and they're firemen by night. Mm-hmm. I learned that. They have, they're pulling this double duty, right? But it's also the commitment to the community that they live in. The impact that we've had on the community is enormous. I could just keep talking. We try to participate in all the programs, and especially those that are good for our employees. Sitting on all the economic boards and all the social events in town, we try to participate and support. But just our commitment to staying in the town and not leaving, being one of those employers, just brings that confidence, I think, for a lot of our people. They're not worried about whether or not this company is ever going to leave New Ulm.
Yeah, and it's also important, when people are looking for a job, you can't underscore the fact enough as far as how important this ESOP is. They're coming in, hey, I get to be an owner. I get to have a bigger voice than what I normally would in any other type of job that I would be able to get in Ulm. And I think, not only from the employee side, but from the customer side as well, that's one of our major differentiating values that we can sell, not only to an employee, but to a customer. When we can go to a customer, or they can come in and they can see the engagement and how everybody else is involved. Sure, I may be working in a specific area on the floor connecting a stator or building a motor, but I'm also in quality. I'm also part of engineering. I'm also part of finance. All of this stuff is important because I'm an owner. I need to know this stuff. I need to be involved. And customers are seeing that. They can go into a plant and say, okay, yeah, you're a production worker, you're an office worker. Nah, it's not really like that at Windings. You're an employee owner. Doesn't matter what position you have as a job description, as you would say, you're part of everything. And that's the impressive part, not only for coming into Windings and seeing that, because we have gotten some pretty top-notch employees that have come from very big companies working for Windings now. Our sales department, for example, wow, we got some great salespeople right now that really know the business. They didn't have to leave. They had great jobs, but they're coming to Windings knowing that we're growing and the culture that we have.
And do you think that it is an attraction for employees to work at an employee-owned company once they know? Do you find most people know about employee ownership?
Coming in, most people are curious. They've never had to work with an employee-owned company before. They're not sure whether it's going to work. I have spoken to people who can't believe it either. There must be something to this. It can't be true, right? It's almost in disbelief. They don't believe that really happens. It's a great value proposition in hiring and recruiting because we're able to explain to people what it means. This is not just a job. You're joining a company where you will start owning capital. And a lot of people are seeing that as valuable. We have had to, however, open up an office in the metro area to tap some of the talent that we need in the metro for marketing, sales, especially design engineers. We have been able to do that. So we do have a satellite office in Eden Prairie where I think we are now up to about 10 or 12 people are working. But that's so we could fill the specific talent that we're looking for. But the value proposition is strong. Just the other day I looked at our census and more than a third of our employees are what I call baby boomers, right? Those are the ones we're really looking to retire now.
Right.
But really happy that about a similar percentage are what we would call millennials or, and Gen X is, so it's a third. Makes for great collaboration, I tell you.
It does.
Have the really experienced ones and the younger ones, not so experienced, learning and working with each other. But it's a fun environment to be in when you have that, right? And so it's a nice mix, and I think that is also a good draw for people to Windings.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
What is the turnover at Windings?
Ooh. So our turnover is 4%. Our retention is really, really high, and you can tell why, right? People will hold on to their jobs, and it's because of the benefit that they have.
Yeah, and the longer they stay, the bigger that benefit gets.
So I have a question for both of you. What do you see as the potential economic impact of employee ownership in Minnesota and beyond? We'll start with Minnesota. Do you want to start?
Economical impact, it's going to bring so much more money into the economy as far as from people that really didn't realize that they would even be able to have that opportunity. So, the amount of wealthy people, subjective, whatever that is going to increase. And I believe that's going to really put Minnesota on the map as far as, this ESOP thing. Look at what it's doing to these employees. I think more companies should do this. So I'm hoping that, owners that are considering this really look into this and decide that, okay, this is not only a good thing for my company, it's a good thing for my employees. And if you're in Minnesota, it's a good thing for Minnesota.
The impact is beyond the money, I believe. Yes, there's certainly a economic boom when you're able to keep your money right here. You sell to some private equity company that's going to move the business out of the state probably, or out of the town that you're in. And small towns depend on those employers. So when they're moved out of town, it's devastating. But it goes beyond that financial impact, I think. Our leaders grapple with how to address inequality in our society. And they still haven't been able to fix that problem. And I think it's because they're not looking deep enough. You look at a company like Windings in New Ulm, Minnesota, and you got a part of your answer. Empower the people to build their own wealth. You don't have to try to take it and spread it and move it from one part to the other. Empower them to do that. Make it easier for employees to buy the business that they work in. And no one ever gets wealth or rich from just earning wages. So if our plan is to provide employment only, that does not solve the problem of inequality. You've got to get to the point where people own something and they can grow that something, whatever it is, right? And make it into wealth. And that's what happens in an employee-owned company. So allowing employees to own the business they work in, whether it's 100% or part ownership, however they do it. There are also different models, not just ESOPs, right? Different cooperatives. But just the fact that employees can have a stake in that outcome starts to help them build wealth. And I think you're doing a great job in promoting that and making it possible for more of that to happen. It doesn't matter your race, it doesn't matter your gender, it doesn't matter your educational status. Once you work with this business, you have the opportunity to participate in capital, owning capital. That's how we will address inequality.
You have my vote.
I'm not running.
I know. Just in case someday you do.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about the culture there. Do you? I know you will answer any question. I bow to you for that. That is a strong leader that says that to their staff, no matter who they are, right? Because I'm sure it's not all like...
Some of them are uncomfortable sometimes.
But right? It's not people going, yay, we're so grateful. I'm sure some of them are kind of hard-hitting. I also believe that it's not a bad thing, right, to have disagreement or learning, that actually sometimes when there is, you have an opportunity to grow and change things. And it seems to me like the hierarchy of access to the CEO and president, which in many companies, unless you're in the C-suite, the workers never see you, spend time with you. What is that difference of the culture you have built around having joy and fun together? How does Winding celebrate?
Ooh, celebration. A lot of celebration. I as you say celebrate, I think about employees getting their statements this year.
Wow.
Was it good?
A lot of smiling faces. We delivered more than 26% value for them in the last year.
In 1 year?
That's just 1 year. That outpaces the S&P. They were happy. They felt good about their performance. But that wasn't my performance. That was everybody's performance.
Right.
And that was their stake in the outcome. So when they opened up their statements, they went, this is why we're an employee owner. Now we see the reward. All of what we do, this is how it shows up. Right? And then we celebrate when we have employee owners who say, I'm going to retire early. They give you notice, of course, because a lot of people do. They don't just leave because they know we want to do succession planning and ensure that we have somebody to take their spots. They do it right. We celebrate with them because guess what? They experienced it. And they're some of the biggest advocates we have today when they tell their stories about how this has changed their lives. Now, I'm not painting a picture of everything is perfect, everything is glorious. It's hard work. What we do is not easy. We do the tough stuff, really tough. Sometimes we build something many times to get it right because we're going for that precision,
right,
high performance, right? It's got to hit the performance and we can't get it wrong. But that's part of what we do. And when you can show employees that you have a stake in the outcome and there's this reward for all your hard work and your dedication over the years, that's something to celebrate. How many employees can say that they have something like that after working 30 years?
I would say a very small amount.
Yeah, and I do have to add that Heather always sells herself short. Not to get that percentage increase, you have to have the right leadership and you have to have the right vision. And we are so lucky to have that with Heather because she has been doing that for so many years. Obviously, we're not selling the company, but she has the knowledge of righting the ship, making it grow, and having that vision that, okay, this is what we need to do to make the stock value grow. We didn't have it grow every year. There was times that the stock value did go down, and we're always warned of that. And that was one thing that Roger had said right away back in 1998 is, this is no guarantee. You need to put your blood, sweat, and tears into this thing to make darn sure that it's going to go the right way. And one of the keys is making sure that everything is managed properly.
Well.
Yes.
And that's the good job that Roger did, right, in preparing the company. Because you have to do that. Employees just don't become managers tomorrow.
No.
Right? They're not trained and prepared for it. But part of the transition should be preparing them to manage this business because they're becoming owners. We have education that we provide, financial education we provide our employees. So everyone who joins our company gets to spend time with a wealth advisor, a financial advisor.
Well, that is amazing.
And he not only advises on their 401k and pension, but he will advise on the ESOP and what it means and how you are going to ensure that you maximize your value. So it is just amazing. You talk about celebration. When we're doing ESOP month, which is October next month, we're preparing for that. We have a whole week of a whole month of education for people. And our wealth advisors come in and they sit with people one-on-one and they talk about, well, this is what it looks like today. Where do you want to go? How are we going to help you get there? How are we going to help you achieve your dream? And what part does Windings play here? Imagine that. We're talking about people who are working on the line, who can tell you about stocks and bonds and how to diversify and when is the appropriate time to diversify.
Most workers do not have access to wealth managers, or they don't have their own banker.
They don't have the wealth to manage.
No.
So they won't even think about a financial advisor. They can't. They're worried about how to buy groceries.
Yeah, it's interesting that you can go into a wealth manager, and some people, geez, I'm a little nervous. Do I have enough? Am I going to be able to make it? What's this person going to tell me? Well, when you go in, they look at your information. Oh, yeah, you're fine. What else can we do to increase that? It's like, oh, okay, that's a whole different conversation.
I think it's also very unique that you celebrate when people retire early, rather than it be this, typically when people leave, they don't tell you right to the day, and it's just a scary thing. From what I'm hearing, it seems as though Windings Inc. and their employee ownership and that culture of ownership, it does not just mean the C-suite or the managers, or it means people that answer the phones and people that help clean the buildings and
maintenance. Yes. People who open the mail. Once you become an employee owner, you begin to participate in ownership.
Do you find for the young workers coming in, because they're not really thinking about retirement, how do you pitch and educate them of, it seems so far away, but this is what can happen? How do you do that with your wealth managers, that education when you're onboarding?
Yes,
Okay.
and we spend a lot of time onboarding our employees and get really high marks for our onboarding process. Part of the onboarding is explaining what ESOP means. What how does this work? What does it mean for you? but also continually having that financial advisor spend time with them. And like I said, it's not just about the ESOP. We also want them to maximize their 401k because we do contribute more. The more you give, the more the company puts in for you. And so, we have people who are maximizing their 401k. We've got people who are contributing 10, 12% to their 401k. In addition to the employee, to what they have in the ESOP. So it's just being prepared and committed to helping employees be owners, right? There is an element of that as well, because it's not just going to happen. They're not trained on managing a company. They're not trained to think this way. Most of them are coming from companies that never even talk about these things.
That is just such an amazing opportunity for having another option of a way to do business, not taking away, right, if people still want the traditional top-down. But what you're really saying is that leadership, while you have the leadership team, that leadership is everyone.
Is everyone. Everyone leads.
Everyone leads.
Everyone leads.
That's almost unheard of. So I'd like for you both to answer this too. If you had someone that might be getting ready, we have 52,000 plus businesses that's owners, or 60 plus in Minnesota. If they were thinking of, how do I exit, my kids aren't coming home, that we're going to run my generational company, and or my spouse has told me that if I don't shut it down soon and travel the world with them, then we might not have a happy marriage. What would you say to owners about employee ownership? You chose the employee stock ownership plan at Windings Inc. That's one model, right? We have many models. What would you say to someone who doesn't really know what to do, maybe has never had a wealth manager, maybe not really great at the books or open books, about their fear of even exploring or knowing about employee ownership? How can we do better?
Lots of resources are available to help you navigate this. If current owners would really like to explore this, they can contact the MNCEO, right? Minnesota Center of Employee Ownership, the ESOP Association. There is the NCEO, National Center for Employee Ownership. There are a lot of resources out there available that will help educate you. And many of them will quickly answer the phone if you were just to make a phone call. Because I have found that a lot of these agencies and departments and organizations just want to promote more employee ownership. And there are several different ways to attack it. One model may not be best suited for you, but you could explore all kinds of different ways to set this up. It starts with just doing the research or making a phone call. The one thing I will add to Kirsten is this. I think a lot of sellers may hesitate thinking, but my employees may not be ready. Jim will tell you, they didn't know they were ready either. But when you introduce this to them and they can understand what this may mean and how it will change their lives, they will be ready to take this journey. And this is a legacy that the seller is going to leave. Imagine the impact the seller will have on generations to come from this one decision. The impact of changing people's lives. Can't beat that.
Yeah, and that's so important. I talked about the cultural change from a one owner to a multiple owner company. It's so important. But one of the things that I think is very critical is how you set it up. Do the research, educate yourself, and then pass that education on to the employees as soon as possible so that they know, okay, how's this going to be set up? Is it going to be a select few individuals that's going to be controlling this? Boy, that's a little dangerous, because as you get closer to retirement, those people are looking out for themselves. Windings is a perfect model of how it works and how it works the right way, because everybody is involved and they do their jobs. We're employee owned, but we're not looking out for number one or trying to grab a little bit more for ourselves. It doesn't work that way. And that's what's so important, is do the research and find out the models that have been working and working well for many years. And really mold your approach around that. So I can't say enough about ESOP. It's amazing.
Research exists that says ESOPs outperform counterparts. Employee-owned companies are more productive. They're more profitable. The engagement is much higher. Retention is higher. It presents a strong proposition for recruiting and hiring. All around, they do far better than the average company.
I'm in awe, both of you. And Heather and Jim, I'm so grateful we got to spend this time today together and for you to share your stories. I'm excited about your employee ownership celebration, and I'm hoping I'm going to call your second in command and ask her for you guys to do a 3-minute video, just of anything you want to submit, and we're going to highlight it. And Windings Inc. is magical in their community. Roger Ryberg, who is on our board, is just an amazing human being all the way around, and his family, and that he chose to keep that there and make sure it was there for generations, right? Even though you're in San Diego and you might do acquisitions and have spots in other areas, Windings Inc. has been a member of the New Ulm community for how many years now?
Almost 60.
Almost 60 years. Next year, we celebrate 60 years.
Just about my age, a little younger than me.
But we're spreading the wealth as we go to other states. We're spreading this notion of ownership and what it means, and that people can participate in the business. They can have a stake in the outcome.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Worker Co podcast. This podcast is a project of the Minnesota Center for Employee Ownership. If this podcast stirred hope and curiosity in you, and you are interested in learning more about employee ownership, please reach out. MNCEO is here to provide connections and resources to guide you as you consider employee ownership. Our website is www.mnceo.org. Thanks again for being part of this conversation with the Worker Co podcast. Hope to see you again.